If you ever find yourself in Grumbleton-on-Sea, do not bother asking the locals about caped crusaders who bend steel, hurl lightning, or leap over cathedrals. They will roll their eyes, point to the pastry shop on Mac Run Avenue, and say, "We've only got the one, and he fights crime with a spatula." Then they will lower their voices reverently because the man they are talking about is Milo Butterworth, otherwise known as the Fluff, the world's first and only super souffle. Milo was an unassuming pastry chef with politely curled hair and a cardigan the color of undercooked custard. For years, he managed Butterworth's Bakes, a shop whose most daring product was a cinnamon bun that occasionally tried to escape its paper cup. Yet Milo harbored a secret that even he considered ridiculous. From the moment he touched a souffle dish, the universe behaved as though it had merely been waiting for him to do exactly that. Eggs whisked themselves into obedient peaks, ovens whispered the optimal temperature like gossip, and the resulting puff emerged, tall, trembling, and fragrant enough to make angels drool. The true shock came when a shoplifter inhaled a cooling batch of Milo's chocolate cardamom clouds, dropped the stolen petty cash, and began weeping apologies about his troubled childhood. Milo tested the phenomenon on a broom closet spider, on the visiting tax assessor, and finally on the neighborhood hooligan known as Skateboard Trevor. Every time, the soufflefla's aroma reduced its target to mellow putty. Conclusions were reluctantly drawn. His soufflefla's were so perfect they could disarm anything with a nose. The rumors reached Constable Agatha Thimble, who arrived during Tuesday morning prep and demanded a demonstration. Milo obliged, presenting her with a demure vanilla bean specimen. One sniff, and the constable forgot what she was investigating, offered to wash the mixing bowls, and ultimately submitted a report declaring Butterworth's Bakes a municipal asset of strategic deliciousness. 2 days later, the mayor presented Milo with a certificate, a sizable broom closet retrofitted into a micro-bakery beneath City Hall, and a politely worded invitation to fight crime on behalf of Grumbleton. Milo protested, "I don't have the physique for heroism. My biceps are mostly meringue." "Perfect," replied the mayor. "We've already got a muscle-powered vigilante, the bench press bishop. Frankly, he's dreary. We need something lighter." Thus the Fluff was born, a bespectacled crusader in a reversible apron, armed with a titanium whisk, a satchel of emergency ramekins, and a battery-powered, gyroscopically stabilized, shoulder-mount convection oven. City Council's Budget Committee spent 3 hours debating whether the device should include cup holders. Democracy prevailed. It holds 2 in case of coffee. His first assignment arrived sooner than the ink on his health and safety waiver could dry. The villainous bombshell Belinda had taken hostages at the Bank of Extra Cautious Lending, threatening to detonate an explosive debt forgiveness device. The bench press bishop tried bench pressing her getaway car, only to discover it was made of inflatable vinyl. When negotiations stalled, the Fluff tiptoed through the side door with a bowl of pear amaretto batter. Despite the distant shrieks, he whisked silently until it reached glossy perfection, slid it into his portable oven, and waited the critical 12 minutes. Belinda sniffed the air mid-rant. "Is that toasted almonds?" Her detonator clattered to the floor. She drifted toward Milo like a cartoon ghost, eyes glassy, the scent curling around her like warm velvet. The hostages relaxed. The souffle rose. When the timer pinged, Belinda surrendered herself into handcuffs in exchange for a spoonful. The media called it the astonishing aroma armistice, and the Fluff was photographed awkwardly shaking hands with officials while cradling a lukewarm ramekin. Sales at Butterworth's Bakes tripled overnight. For 6 breathable months, Grumbleton lived under a benevolent haze of sugar and steam. Pickpockets, graffiti artists, and mid-level supervillains alike succumbed to the waft. The city established quiet baking zones, cordoned spaces where citizens were instructed not to slam doors or yell surprise during the Fluff's more delicate operations. Criminal statistics dropped, cholesterol statistics rose. The mayor claimed progress, but any confectionery idyll invites its opposite, and in Grumbleton's case, the opposite arrived in the person of Dr. Flat. Formerly Professor Priscilla Parch, culinary chemist and bitter finalist of the Great British Bake Off, She had devoted her life to preventing anything from ever rising against Souffle's egos, hopes, whatever. Clad in a lab coat dyed the unhappy beige of overmixed batter, Dr. Flat announced her masterstroke live on morning television. She had synthesized a reverse leavening gas that would blanket the city on Saturday night, rendering every baked good flaccid and every citizen apathetic. "My gaseous miracle will keep your precious fluff occupied with collapsed frauds," she cackled, patting a large Zeppelin moored atop the abandoned Needmore flour mill. "The era of puff is over. Prepare for deflation." Panic ensued. Bakers rioted at the idea of perma pancakes. Children hoarded marshmallows. The bench press bishop tore a telephone pole from the sidewalk and shouted that life without cream horns was not worth living. City Hall convened an emergency meeting. Politicians panicked over the semantics of flat versus still slightly domed, then turned in desperation to their souffle-powered savior. Milo excused himself to clean frosting from his spectacles and think. A gas attack required mobility and scale. One souffle might pacify half a bakery. He needed dozens, maybe hundreds, delivered simultaneously before the Zeppelin expelled its gloom. He also needed to reach the mill without jostling his batter, a paradox fit to drive a man to biscuits. Fortunately, Grumbleton's resident gadgeteer, Nell Spatula, viterioed Milo for saving her from her own experimental self-buttering waffle iron. She designed what she called the Souffletron, a stainless steel exoframe resembling a cross between a lobster and a food truck. It included 12 miniature convection globes, vibration-dampening knee suspension, and a retractable parasol to shield delicate tops from drizzle. The contraption clamped over Milo's torso, transforming him into a human oven hive who waddled like an armored pastry toward destiny. Nell also pressed a small vial into his hand. Sour cherry nitro essence. If aroma alone doesn't stop Dr. Flat, this will give it fangs. Just don't sneeze while uncorking. Saturday evening found the Fluff and Spatula perched on a rooftop opposite the flour mill. The Zeppelin loomed overhead, a bloated gray slug against the clouds, its propeller of impending dreariness thumping ominously, docked below. Dr. Flat's henchpeople, whom she called the Sunken Centers, patrolled with egg whisks modified into tasers. Inside the souffletron, Milo preheated each globe, triple-checked ramekins, and whispered kind, encouraging words to the batter, like a parent at a school play. The plan was simple: infiltrate, bake, aromatize. The scent would float upward on the mill's warmth, coaxing the Zeppelin crew into docility long enough for Nell to trigger its emergency vent and dump the reverse leavening gas harmlessly into the sea. Simple plans, Milo knew, had a tendency to curdle. "Ready?" Nell whispered, twirling a titanium spatula that folded into a grappling hook. "As I'll ever be," Milo answered, heart tap-dancing inside its custardy cage. The descent was pure slapstick. The mill's loading bay was guarded by a hulking man called the Overbeaten, whose forearms resembled bags of cement. Nell distracted him by shouting criticism of his scone technique, while Milo tiptoed past, only to discover that vibration-dampening knees do not prevent an entire exoframe from squeaking like a violin made of mice. The Overbeaten swung, missed, and accidentally hurled himself into a pile of gluten sacks, developing an instant allergy to consciousness. Inside, they found the main atrium converted into a pseudo-laboratory, vats bubbling with anti-raise compounds, conveyor belts feeding canisters labeled Despair Extra Strength. Dr. Flat herself supervised a final systems check, cackling about humidity indexes. Phase 1, location, assess, check. Phase 2, commence baking. Milo set the souffletron to silent mode, essentially a polite hum, and began ladling batter. 12 ramekins slid into 12 globes. Egg whites quivered in anticipation. The air warmed, sugar caramelized. Within minutes, a gentle perfume of vanilla and hope drifted through the warehouse. Hedge people paused. One sniffed, sighed, and holstered her whisk taser. Another sat cross-legged, removed his helmet, and began humming, "Yes, we have no bananas." The souffleurs climbed their ramekins like eager mountaineers. Even Dr. Flat twitched. She consulted a monitor which, unhelpfully, displayed the words, "Ambient pleasantness rising." Impossible, she hissed, whipping round just in time to see Milo waddle from behind a crate, radiating golden steam like a brunchtime messiah. She pointed a ladle of anti-race sludge. I should have known the Prince of Puff would stick his spatula where it doesn't belong. I prefer pastry pacifists, Milo said, adjusting his goggles. Let's talk about your feelings over dessert. Her answer was a button press. Sirens blared. Ventilation shafts opened and a bitter, yeasty wind gusted downward. The reverse leavening gas. Ramekins trembled. A souffle in Globe 8-3 sagged at the edges like a punctured balloon. Nell shouted through comms, "She's releasing it early. We're ahead of schedule but behind in altitude." Milo's mind raced. Aroma alone might not overpower chemical warfare, unless he fumbled for the vial of sour cherry nitro essence. One sneeze worth could perfume 3 neighborhoods, but if mishandled, it could also caramelize eyebrows at 20 paces. He tugged at the cork with trembling gloves. Gas seeped across the floor, an invisible fog of discouragement. Milo imagined every bakery window pane collapsing in sorrow. "Not today," he muttered, and flung the vial into Globe 1. A scarlet plume swirled through the hovering batter, which hissed, sparkled, and rose another full inch with something bordering on swagger. The timer dinged. Like synchronized ballerinas, 12 soufflés emerged, domed, glossy, unabashedly magnificent. Their scent roared across the atrium in a fruity thunderclap. Hinge people swooned. Dr. Flat staggered, clutching her nose. "No," she wailed. "I spent years engineering negativity. You can't just, is that cherry?" She inhaled a second time, longer, slower, eyes fluttering shut. When they reopened, they contained the fragile glaze of a repentant contestant receiving constructive feedback from a Paul Hollywood handshake. Milo seized the moment. "Now the Zeppelin!" Already on it. Spatula swung from a crane cable, smashed a skylight, and catapulted herself to the mooring lines above. With the agility of a caffeinated squirrel, she clambered to the control gondola, yanked the vent release, and kicked the blimp square in its buoyant undercarriage. A farting whoosh echoed over the rooftops as the reverse leavening gas vented uselessly into the salt breeze. Freed of payload, the Zeppelin rose, sagged, then drifted seaward like a sulking jellyfish. Back below, Dr. Flat slumped onto a flour sack. The Souffletron's exhaust fans wafted waves of cherry vanilla surrender across her face. She blinked, teared up, and whispered, "I only ever wanted my cakes to be perfect. The judges said my textures were stodgy." Milo knelt, offering a spoonful of souffle. "Perfection isn't about height," he said softly. "It's about joy. Also, using room temperature eggs helps." She tasted, dissolved into gentle sobs, and then, most shockingly, smiled. The sunken centers applauded like reformed critics. Someone produced cappuccinos. Nell descended, covered in blimp grease and triumph. Official cleanup was surprisingly civil. Dr. Flat agreed to community service teaching chemistry at the junior college under the condition she remain at least 50 meters from industrial leavening agents. The mill was converted into an open-air arts venue called Risefest. The bench press bishop volunteered as security, bench pressing abandoned gas canisters for the crowds. The city threw a victory parade. Confetti cannons launched biodegradable sugar paper that gradually dissolved into sweet drizzle. Butterworth's Bakes introduced a commemorative Cherry Save the Day souffle, which sold out by breakfast. People wore t-shirts reading "Stay Fluffy." Tourists queued outside Milo's shop hoping the aroma alone would fix their marital troubles or student loans. Milo, embarrassed by attention, retreated to his kitchen, where his mother had once told him that love and cream of tartar were the only true stabilizers. He wiped counters, fed the sourdough starter, and considered retirement. Surely someone else could waft villains into complacency? 2 weeks later, a newscast reported a jewel heist by the Croissant Corsair, a scoundrel who hypnotized guards with buttery layers. Milo sighed, tied on his apron, and activated the Souffletron. Some gifts, it seemed, were too fluffy to ignore. He met Nell at the back door. She held out a fresh blueprint, thinking of adding steam injection and a Spotify playlist. "Only if it has quiet jazz," Milo said. "Souffles hate drum solos." They stepped into the skylight's glow. Two unlikely guardians armed with sugar, egg whites, and unreasonable optimism. Across Grumbleton, noses twitched in anticipatory delight, unaware that salvation was once again preheating. Some cities rely on darkness to brood. Grumbleton depends on fragrance. Whenever a sinister plot curdles, residents need only listen for the faint ding of a timer and the faintly ridiculous battle cry that follows, "Who's ready for dessert?" and justice. And sure enough, at that instant, an aroma floats across the rooftops, warm, inviting, absurdly perfect, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest rise can save the day, and that true strength may be nothing more than a spoon, a smile, and the courage to stay fluffy